Now, we heard earlier from Jamie Dimon, the boss of the world's biggest bank, saying we're not entirely out of the woods when it comes to assuming a soft economic landing with no recession. The key for Australia, a small cog in the global economy, is to keep our consumers going. And given that consumer demand makes up more than 50% of the Australian economy, confidence, therefore, is key. The ANZ-Roy Morgan Consumer Confidence Survey today shows an improvement in the past week, but a fall over the longer term. Richard Yetsenga is the Chief Economist of the ANZ Bank and joins me now. Richard, always good to chat to you. This is the key, isn't it? Trying to keep the consumer going and really not having them fall into a malaise, as it were.
Well, I think sentiment is telling you on a per capita level, consumers individually aren't feeling fantastic. Confidence is up, but as you point out, down from the levels we had a couple of years ago.
But that's that per capita recession that we saw out of the national accounts, right?
There's a lot more consumers because of the population growth that's been occurring over the past 12 months. So the economy overall is doing okay, but at an individual level, I think people are sending signals still of, some disquiet.
So therefore, the government's okay because they're getting more tax take from the people. There's now inquiries into supermarkets. There's been inquiries into airlines. There's been no inquiry into the government as to why it takes so much of the people's tax off them.
Well, we have that chance every 3 years, Ross.
Yes, that's a good point.
It's called an election.
That's a very good observation. But it is true that there are more pressures that come on consumers that maybe they don't see. It's your insurance policy that might be rising. It's going to be a whole range of different issues, different costs that simply creep up on families.
Well, interest rates, of course, are the highest in more than 15 years as well, and that's a big impost for at least a third of households. Something to bear in mind. I'm hopeful we'll get some lower interest rates at some stage this year, maybe not till closer towards the end, but I think that's where we're going. And lower interest rates, I guess, in a good sense, not in the Jamie Dimon recession sense, but in the soft landing sense.
Okay, so then tell me, in history, when you look back in consumer sentiment surveys, does lower interest rates immediately mean a boost to consumer confidence? Is that what it generally means?
Look, generally that passes through, and certainly if we've had a soft landing, so inflation's come down, so some of those cost of living pressures are abating. If unemployment hasn't risen too much, if we're still getting some decent wage growth, I think we'll have a better kind of sentiment mix towards the end of the year than the way we've started this year.
So, Richard, can I just ask you one other economic question? Because I heard the Treasury yesterday saying we've got to go for higher growth, which is a great aspiration. But the sense is that if we go for higher growth, which will lead to higher wages and higher outcomes for companies, the problem is it could create inflation, which could lead to higher interest rates. I just wondered whether, as a community, we are really cognizant of it, and whether we're accepting of that risk potentially.
Well, I think the question is: do you think the economy needs more demand, or do you think it needs more productivity? Which one of those is going to give you higher growth?
Can't you have both?
Well, you need the productivity though to
get the demand.
You to really have both. I don't see a shortage of demand. We want more houses, more defence. The climate transition, more infrastructure. We want consumers to be better off so they'll spend more. All of that's nice. What's limiting us is the productive potential of the economy. That's the productivity story.
But isn't that in the hands of the government, that the government actually can create the rules to improve the productivity in Australia?
Well, if you run a business, productivity is really in your hands, but certainly the government does have a big impact on the envelope that the economy can operate at, and the laws it sets and the way it regulates.
But doesn't history also tell us that the big productivity gains, that they're political decisions that are just a bit too hard for most governments to take?
Well, I don't know. I think voters are finding it quite hard as well, to be honest. I don't know that many people agree about what we should be doing to move the economy forward. 40 years ago, there were some reasonably, if you like, transparent and straightforward decisions, liberalise interest rates, cut tariffs, float the dollar. All of these things together meant the macro economy could then get on and businesses make individual decisions. What we're left with on the productivity side now is reducing small nuisance tariffs, dealing with nuisance taxes, trying to raise education standards, ensuring the migrants we bring in have the right language skills. Can we give them the right language skills so they can use their...
So what you're saying is it's now 1,000 different small things rather than 4 or 5 big picture pieces that you could do.
Which is much more policy intensive, much more time intensive, means the payoff is less easy to see. It's a much more complicated and convoluted story, I think. lots of productivity things we can do, but they're different from the big things we used to do.
I'll tell you what, Richard, it's great to have you in the program as always, and many thanks for your time today. There you go, Richard Yetsenga